10,
Uh,
15? Okay.
yeah, my daughter has a concert for summer camp, and so we need to leave on time to get everyone there. So I think we are live on YouTube. Welcome everyone. Let me just pause the back talk. It's weird that the app like live stream it on your windows, so it like is talking over yourself, which is incredibly annoying. But we're not. This today is not to rant about the broken interfaces of large corporations. We have a different rant about the brokenness of large corporations. So let's start there. So you've written some epic rants about artificial intelligence and large language models, which I largely agree with. Do you want to take like 5 minutes to summarize kind of your critique of AI as it's being practiced and evangelized today? Or do you want me to try and summarize what I got from you?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so the way I see it, there's a lot of hype around AI, mostly pushed by large corporations who have AI services and products, but also there's a whole ecosystem of pundits and commentators and evangelists and doomsayers talking about AI. And on the one hand, there are certain things that AI does that are really impressive and extremely useful. There are certain risks which are genuine and need to be taken seriously. But both of those are overshadowed by an enormous amount of hype and something between misinformation, disinformation, and poorly thought out speculation. And that's the world we find ourselves in. And I see there being two fundamental issues, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, that you're concerned about. One is that the very idea of a large language model that quote unquote knows everything is just a horrible idea. Because you don't know everything. What you know is biased. And if you're supposed to know everything, then you just make stuff up. And that is just wrong. That is just a bad idea. And like, why do people try to want this thing? There's that. The second is that most of these models, for better and worse, are created by large corporations which have specific vested interests. So on the one hand, these language models don't tell you how to commit suicide or plot the perfect murder because these corporations don't want to embarrass themselves. And so they try to put some safeguards on it, but we don't know what those are. And these organizations are not clear about their values and their motives. And I'm not sure we trust them even if they were. And so those are probably the idea of large language models as sort of this omniscient artificial intelligence is a bad idea. And it's even if it was a good idea, it would be really bad to trust large corporations to provide these things to us. So those are kind of the two fundamental critiques I've heard from you about artificial intelligence, but feel free to refine or elaborate on those.
That is correct. To that, of course, yeah, you mentioned the hallucinations and justifying incorrect information that they do really well, but it's still confusing. The main concern that I have is for people to be able to debug problems. Why do you decide to do that? Why do you tell me that? Oh, you can't, when it comes to LLMs, all you have is a bunch of numbers, a bunch of these millions of parameters. There's no way that you can figure out why this thing decided came up with this inference or whatever, because it can't explain itself. And as a user of tech, I know something always goes wrong. People try to paint the rosy picture. Oh, it's just perfect. It just works. Well, no, it does not. And when it doesn't work, it's frustrating. You have to go to a meeting, you have to leave, but the thing is not working. What do you do? If you're presented with this savvy thing that first of all, what it learns comes from the internet, that's a problem because the internet is full of, like I said, disinformation, bias, all those things. So the source is terrible. So come on.
So, I mean, for example, let me ask you, let's refine that one a bit. So, like, say you had an AI that was trained on, say, the Encyclopedia Britannica, right? So, like, there's two main corpuses people use to train AI. One is the open web, and the other is the book corpus. So only published books, trusting ideas that come unfiltered from, or even filtered from the open internet, that's one bad idea. Let's scope it down, because I'm going to be more precise about the critique. So let's say we have an AI, and there are some which are trained on a book corpus, so that they just only know what's in books or encyclopedias or Wikipedia or things like that. In that world, does that decrease your concern about these sources?
The source, yes. The processing, no. It will still hallucinate. That's still something that I don't know if it can be solved, but apparently with even billions of parameters, it cannot be solved. And the companies say that.
So let's talk about that, because that's an interesting point. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to go through your other points first?
Talk about the
hallucination problem.
Yeah, you can talk about that.
Right. So I would argue that what's interesting to me is that I think that this idea of what is people's goal, right? What are they trying to create, and have they succeeded? And like I said, that they want an AI that knows everything, right? That is the goal that they have. And they have something that looks like that and tries to act like that. So if it has an answer, it will tell you, unless it's been conditioned not to. And if it doesn't have an answer, it will make it up. Because it, like human beings, we don't know. This is a good line between explicit knowledge and implicit knowledge. Like, I have an implicit knowledge of how to ride a bike. Or actually, I have implicit knowledge of how to read English. Right? At one point, it may have been an explicit thing, but it's long since gotten buried deep into my synapses of what it means to understand English and how to write it. Whereas, like, my knowledge of physics and what remains is mostly explicit knowledge. Like, I remember a series of facts about particles and quarks and things like that. And so one critique of AI is that everything in these large language models is implicit knowledge. It has no concept of where it learned it from or what it means. It's just sort of instinctive. That's another thing with AI. It just has an instinct. Oh, I feel like I should say this word because you gave me this prompt, is one way of thinking about the AI we've built. And it doesn't know if it's just making stuff up or drawing on useful sources. So that's the way I would describe the source of the problem, is that they have no gap between, they only have implicit knowledge of everything they've absorbed. Does that seem like a plausible explanation of the problem?
Well, I haven't written a model or worked with the with the notebooks, or I kind of know a little bit about it, but I haven't worked on LLMs and all that. But I think it sounds correct what you said.
Right. I think about this, like, I don't know if you ever had to deal with a small child who lies. But sometimes they're lying deliberately because they know one thing, they want to tell you another. Sometimes they're just, like, my daughter was famous for this when she was like 5 years old, is we would be having a conversation and she would just start randomly making sounds that sound like something that people would say. Like, we would say, like, and the punchline was like, and, I didn't know it was a horse. And she would go, she would just make the sounds because she knew that that's what people would say. And she would, like, for a long time, every pun, there was this pun, it's knock knock joke. Let's do it here. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Dexter.
Dexter who?
Dexter halls with boughs of holly. La 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 la. First knock knock joke on the Digitizing Pod YouTube channel. Yay! But so she heard this, and everyone laughed. So every time we would tell a joke, she would interrupt and say, "Dexter halls with boughs of holly," because she thought it was a funny punchline, because that was the context she learned it in. She didn't understand the joke, the setup, the context. She would just randomly do this, right? Because she wanted to be part of the conversation. And that's what I think of LLMs. They've been trained to emit a certain response when they get a trigger. And like a good dog or a small child, they just spew out whatever they have. They don't have any sense of context or explicit knowledge. So anyway, so the idea there is that Okay. So this is where you and I have gone around. It's probably a good time to have that conversation, which is that I would argue that the only way to learn language is implicitly by exposure, because language is so nuanced, contextual, and evolving and ill-defined, that every attempt to try to reduce language out of some formal set of roles that you can parse has been, frankly, a dismal failure. And so the argument, I believe, how we solve this problem is we need minimal language models that can understand like childlike knowledge, but they've been very carefully trained on like there's certain sets of things that are well known with a well-curated data set. Like we take, like say, a good example would say like Encyclopedia Britannica, not bias-free, but reasonable, right? A lot of places I know the kids can use Britannica, but not Wikipedia. So like as a starting point, and I'm not saying this is perfect, but it's a plausible starting point. You train a language model on, Encyclopedia Britannica, and it says, and then you train it to say, okay, things that you have learned and understood from this, you can say, I believe this is true. And then anything you have not heard of or you don't recognize, it should be possible. So it's easy to say, I don't, like, if you ask a kid something, teaching them to say, I don't know that, you ask a kid something and say, I don't know that word, or I don't know that concept. Let me look it up for you, or just like, you have to figure that out somewhere else, right? So humble digital intelligence, right? Not omniscient artificial intelligence that claims to know everything, but humble digital or pure digital intelligence. It's just the intelligence. It doesn't have much knowledge. It knows how to understand and read and write English. It has some basic understanding of everyday concepts, at some level. Maybe we pick it at a third. There was this kids encyclopedia we got when I was young, which was like World Book for Kids, right? So very simple, basic, physics and history. Doesn't have all the gory, messy stuff. And like, you would like an AI that like knew that much, right? It knew sort of basic, what we would like a third grader to be innocent, to be pure, right? Not tainted by all the corruption and violence and hate, but at least a simplistic, coherent view of the world, so they can look at that and say, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's like, I don't know anything about that. I don't think I want to know anything about that, right? That sort of pure digital intelligence, I think we both agree would be a good thing. And my claim is that we need some sort of minimal language model to pull that off.
Okay.
Let me pause there.
I take, yeah, that's a good point of view. The other side is it's like the absolutists, like it's Bitcoin or nothing. I'm on the other side. I'm on the no LLMs. And
no LLMs. Are you against all LMs? That's the question.
Well, okay. Let me put it this way. Can I share the screen?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I wasn't really, I think this is it. Okay. So this is what I've been working on the past couple of days. So one of my, can you see it? Can you see this little round thing? Okay.
Yeah.
So let me maximize this. Yeah. So the main concern that I have against LLMs is that they can be used to poison my knowledge. They can be used to manipulate my knowledge, to make me do things that I do not want to do.
Sorry, and the reason for that is, let me just ask a stupid question. Most major corporations and political parties do that anyway. What's the difference with LLMs?
The difference is that we are moving towards a digital world. Everything is going to be digital.
Do you and I are already talking on Zoom and communicating via chat? How is everything not already digital for us?
Oh,
and is not Facebook and Twitter already corrosively corrupting the digital realm? What's actually new about LLMs?
I am talking about a legal realm where the individual is the monarch. Right now we have
Okay.
this. Okay, right now we have this thing where, oh, there's Facebook, there's Microsoft, they're so powerful, they have all this money, they have no. When it comes to
Right.
my
Your
knowledge,
vision is, yeah, right. You
when it
want
comes to,
digital, you want personal sovereignty, right?
yes, and
Yeah, but your question was that LLMs are evil. I wanted to stay on that topic. Why do you say
I'll say,
LLMs are
okay,
evil?
well, they're evil when it comes to my knowledge. Like, okay, LLMs are great for like medical research. They're great for the rovers that are going to Mars, and they are absolutely fantastic at that. But when it
Okay,
comes to
let's call those vertical LLMs just to kind of like, or domain specific LLMs, right? Those things you don't have a problem with,
those,
right?
no, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so
But
what
when
is the
it comes,
specific thing that you have problems with Why do you see LLMs as a unique threat as compared to all the other corporate misinformation out in the world?
well, because through those things, you spread, like I said, misinformation. Let's say YouTube. You start watching a video, and then it recommends other videos that that supposed to go into that same theme, but and I don't know if that still happens, but there's been cases where a
Lawsuits,
child,
yeah, where people
yeah,
radicalized or exposed to, yeah, but like I'm still confused by like, let me phrase this as a concern, maybe get a little bit more emotionally neutral. So your concern is that LLMs will accelerate the encroachment on your personal digital sovereignty? Is that your concern?
yes, yes, it's like ceding control to corporations, to government agencies, uh, of my knowledge, of my mind.
So what do
My
you, okay,
deep.
so slow down. Slow down. So of your mind, this is where I'm curious about it. I think this is actually a good thing for us to articulate. Like you say, are you not, how is that different than just seeding your mind than the when people would sit and watch TV in the 1950s? Are they
Mhm.
seeding their mind to the networks? Is that the same thing, or is that different than what you're talking about?
That is very similar, yeah, because they're passive consumers of information. Are they learning anything? They're learning what the networks want them to learn, right?
Right.
Do you
So right.
Fox
So
News?
right. So so let me. Okay. So let's say that okay. Um, so this is a bit about our evil corporate overlords, and even if I work for some of them, but we will use that term for now, right? Is that any different? Why is that a concern for you about LLMs? Like, is there and for example, there are open source LLMs that are
Hmm.
not owned by corporations that people have
Yes.
built, trained on various public open data sets. Are you against those LLMs?
No, like I said, when it comes to
But, but,
specific uses, like for medical research, but when it
so
comes
okay,
to,
but like so so a general purpose open source LLM, would you object to that?
yes, because
Ah,
why?
okay, good.
Because a regular person, my mother, a teenager who just starting using Facebook or whatever, they don't know how to use those things. They can't decipher why went wrong. Why did it give me the wrong answer? You're like not even the builders of the models know why give you the wrong answer. So it's not there's no user serviceable parts when it comes to an LLM, right? Yeah, at some point you're like,
Okay, so let's back up then. So okay, so this is going to decouple the different issues. So one is that there's the evil corporate overlord problem, which is one
mhm,
problem, right? There's the encroachment on your personal, but the specific thing that bugs you about large language models is that they are not debuggable, right? Okay,
yes,
now let me
not
ask you this.
debuggable,
Let me
they're
ask
not
you, yeah,
verifiable.
right. So I think you started creating a list of. Actually, could you send me the link to the Google Doc? I'm sure I must have it somewhere, which is your list of values, because
They
I
went,
think that is.
oh, you want to,
I think you because I want to. We may get to there, and I've lost track of the link. I apologize.
okay.
Uh, let's see if I can find it here. Humane definition. I think that was the
Mhm.
document, right?
Mm, yeah.
Okay, let's get there. Okay, so I think that's interesting, right? So here's a question, right? Is your computer debuggable?
No.
So are you going to stop using computers?
No.
No. Okay.
But I
Let me
want
ask
to
you the
build
question.
a better system. Every
Right.
time I
Okay.
get an error
Right.
message, I want every time I get an error dialogue that it says, "Oh, we can't connect," whatever.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
frustrated
Right.
because
Okay. Okay. Right. So what you all right? So this is your frustration with all of technology, is that it's closed, complex, and corporate, right?
Mhm.
Those things. That's actually a nice set of C's. Let me put that in our notes there. Right. This it's closed, corporate. What was my third C there? Probably in the Fathom transcript, but I lost it.
those
Um,
corporate
oh,
stealth,
well, maybe it's something. Well,
corporate.
anyway, yeah. Regardless, the okay. So, like with all of technology, you are frustrated that LLMs are opaque and out of our control, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So the interesting question is, well, okay, we're not going to try and get rid of technology. We don't want to go back to living, in the desert without fire, or in the forest without fire. We want to have technology, but we want to democratize comprehension of technology, right?
And and empower the individual. That's my main concern. I want to empower the individual. I don't want people to feel, oh, because Google did that, so I'm a
Right.
slave to Google. I'm like, no, they are the ultimate monarch when it comes to the digital realm, right?
Well,
So
don't forget. Actually, no. Google is not the ultimate mark anymore. That's the hilarious part. OpenAI is, and
no,
Microsoft
no, no,
is.
no, no, no. Exactly. That's the problem. I want OpenAI to be a second. Okay, let me go back to the sharing because
I just okay. Yeah, go ahead and share. Yeah.
um what is it here? Okay. So this is the so you have, forget your devices, forget everything.
Mm-hmm.
This you have your mind inside
Mm-hmm.
your brain. You're trying to reflect that in the digital realm. So your vault is where you have your knowledge, you have connections with friends and community, and that is your main thing. But that is your meaning. I am friend with this person because we share morals and ethics and beliefs. That's why
Right.
I'm connected to this person. That's what is
Yeah.
reflected here. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to Facebook and YouTube and all those things, especially right now, they have to be separate and apart from all those, for all that meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear in here is like I have it uh, enclosed in an AI enclave. Anything that has to do with machine learning, anything knowledge that was done through machine, automatic means, is enclosed here. It cannot touch anything of my meaningful knowledge and relationships. It is totally separate. That way, I can automate my mind with the bicycle of technology. I can
Okay.
okay. All right, go
All right.
ahead.
I want to make sure we're separating two different issues, right? One is the evil corporate overlord problem,
Yes.
right? But and actually, ironically, Facebook, who is like the ultimate villain in terms of stealing our data, and manipulating our
Mm-hmm.
minds, has
Mm.
actually done the moral thing in that they've released their AI model, Llama, as open source, or not quite open source, but as public source, where people are taking it and hacking it and doing all sorts of things with it, including cloning it in pure open source versions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Facebook is actually not capable of using that AI, those LLMs. For us, they can do all sorts of evil things on their platform. And whether they're evil or good, like selling stuff, depends on whether you're a seller or a buyer, I suppose. But regardless, the question is, like, we don't want to get rid of computers. We want to simplify. Complex. That was the third problem. Is that they're closed, complex, and corporate. That's why it's so messy. Is
Mm-hmm.
that we can't, we lose control. So the question is, um, um, is there, is this like, what would have to change? There's two questions, which are like, what would, so I agree with your values and your goals. We're arguing about means, right? Is there a way to create the humane alternative? I'm a little incoherent here. There's two different questions. Is that one, is it possible to tame language models to avoid, these different problems? Conversely, is it possible to build a useful personal digital knowledge agent without some kind of language model? I think those are the two questions that I wanted to wrestle with.
The answer to your second question is right in your face. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the answer to your question.
Sorry, no, you have not answered. Scroll down your page a little bit because I want to see something you say. The next paragraph, I think. Yes, a person has to be the one who encodes. Like, I refuse to encode everything I know manually with a series of tags. And I bet you 99.9% of the world's population would also refuse. I don't want to handle encoding. Encoding is the most painful part of my life.
Well, that's the problem right there. We have to, sometimes you have to get down to the to the floor and do things. Now the agent in here, the agent in the vault is this software that helps you with that encoding. But the thing is that after it's encoded, if you have questions, you can read, you can get in there and see what in English what was encoded.
So there's two different things then. This is, I think, where we got stuck. So maybe this is good, breaking apart the word encoding. Okay, to say that I want explicit knowledge, like if it gives me a fact or a piece of information, I want it to cite its sources, right?
Yes.
And to be fair, if you ask Bing a question today, it does exactly that, right?
Well, it's two parts of that. So citing sources, fine, but you don't have to get to the sources to see the like an inference. All humans are mammals, right? You don't have to see the source. You can, in the knowledge, you can see it right there. It's all humans
are mammals. So this is this idea of analytic knowledge, right? And like my favorite is that when philosophers talk about analytic knowledge, they would say, all men, a bachelor is an unmarried man, right? They would give that, which is actually a horrible definition because lots of unmarried men that we don't consider bachelors, right? Some of them we call them widows, some of them we call them teenagers, sometimes we call them gay. I mean, there's all sorts of things that that word implies that are not well captured. So in the biological sense, there are places which have well-defined taxonomy, okay? So what's funny is you say, I'm okay using LLM for very narrow vertical specific technology. I say, I'm okay using formal encoding for very narrow technical specifications, right? Like I would much rather my personal digital agent uses Wolfram Alpha for answering mathematical questions, right? But like, here's a question, like, is an otter a marine mammal?
Is a what?
Is a sea otter a marine mammal?
I think so, yeah. Not a fish.
Is a dolphin a whale?
No, but well, they share the no, they're not. I'm not a but.
Again, my point is that like, well, is a whale a fish? Is a question. Well, if you're being strict in the the point is that like, well, when I say whale, I don't mean dolphin, but I'm told that the formal frolic. No, frolic. Sorry, my chocolate Labrador is in a room where he's not supposed to be, which means he will usually chew something he is not supposed to chew. But like, it's like if you're talking about the strict biological sense, there are strict biological systems that can make rigorous statements about that, right?
And
But but like when I say, look, there's a whale, I don't mean there's a dolphin, but technically whales are considered dolphins according to the marine biologist that was giving us the tour, or the lady working on her degree in marine biology. So does she count? I mean, is it like, so my point is that language is ambiguous, except in very
yes,
narrowly defined technical
yes.
spaces.
Language is
And
ambiguous.
so the
That's
question
why.
is,
Go ahead.
the point is if you don't like language by its nature is defined by usage. And eventually it gets formalized in some cases into rigorous taxonomic schemes. But until then, like, 90% of language, if not more, is this amorphous thing that's only understood by usage.
And that's
This
why
is
that's why I advocate to separate language from knowledge.
yes, good. That's actually that's a great way of phrasing it, and that is the same. Is that and this is the idea of and that's actually a good definition of what I was groping towards. This idea of a minimal language model. It basically knows, it has no implicit knowledge of the outside world, but it's able to speak to us. And, it has there's two things to it. There's this sort of this core, well-curated language base, right? Like, I don't have to keep it doesn't like says like, if I say get me a flight to Alaska, it doesn't say, okay, according to the airline code, this is a flight. According to the United States Geological Survey, this is Alaska. Like, I don't want it to cite every word it uses. That would drive me insane, right? There's some language base and some there's some minimal language base which has some public inspectable repository for it. But then it has, clearly it has humility, humility about what it does not know, right? And that it's explicit about what and where it looks it up. And the so I think that solves the practical problems of using these systems, right? Is that you have a very minimal model that you know exactly what dictionary it was trained on, or what corpus is there, and you can inspect it yourself. You can train multiple models against it and compare them. You can enhance, like you say, okay, I get this minimal model, which is kind of a very basic thing, but like, we have the datocracy model, right? With our community says we all get together and say, these are all the sources we trust that align with our values. Let's just feed that in as the implicit understanding. Like, okay, it may not be a core thing about the language, but like, these are the rules of good debate. These are the rules of what it means to be humane. These are the values we have and the examples of it. We feed it all of our podcasts and YouTube videos. And we say, these are the datocratic values. And we want you to trust this source and, internalize these values and this information, right? With our community curated, knowledge set. Are you still with me?
Yeah. So,
right. So I think okay.
We're getting closer, but still, what you call this a minimum
minimal language, minimal language
I
model. Yeah.
call it just an agent, a process, an encoder decoder that at a minimum, or to start, it is, if you're an American person, okay, this software has a vocabulary, and it has it has what would a 6-year-old kid would know about the world. But everything you can get to the source. Let's call it the knowledge is like text source. You can get to the source for its knowledge. You can get to it. You don't have to.
Right. We can see exactly what was the knowledge base it was trained on. Yeah,
exactly.
the corpus.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So that's what I call an agent, and it works with your knowledge, right? It's not, everything is your knowledge. Everything is encoded in your vault, in your knowledge base. And from there you work. You can train it, or you can talk to it yourself, and add information about yourself. I have a sister, a brother, all those things. You can do that.
You can either explicitly encode it in some formal way, or you can say, just look at my family albums, watch our videos, and like digest it, right?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, good. And so in that world, I think we're aligned. I think the thing that we may be stuck on, which is actually a good technical question, is how do you get a sufficiently general encoder that is still debuggable?
I
Right?
use
Because it really,
organically, like I do that. We do that organically. Like, okay, you can work for yourself all you want, but eventually you want to communicate with somebody else, right? So if in a world where that person has also a digital realm and in the same model of language, I mean the same structure, then you can get together. Oh, hey, what I mean when I say this is this or that, or I am a mechanic, and I know things about cars that you might not know because you're a doctor, a medical. So in that sense,
social debuggability.
yes, people work together and they come up with their shared language. Those two people, they
No,
have.
okay, no, I get that. I mean, this is activity pods and ontologies and solid and all this
Yes,
stuff. No,
but
I was actually back to your, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think the specific thing is that you don't trust LLMs because they're not debuggable, right? They have all these just implicit weights in there.
You will not get me to try. Yeah, you will not.
I understand, but here's the question, right? I want to be able to take my agent and say, watch this video and digest the information for me, right? And the question is, and I think this is an interesting question, an agent that is sophisticated enough to do that thing that I wanted to do, to digest raw unstructured text and video, the only way we know to do that today is these sort of foundation models, right? These things which have this massive knowledge and language based in these transformer architectures or whatever that are extremely opaque and difficult to debug. And the alternatives today are really opaque foundation models and incredibly tedious manual encoding, right? All these, cyclopedias and things like that. And the interesting question is there a middle space in the middle of something that is much less painful than manual encoding, but much more transparent than large language models? I think that's the question that I think I am most curious about. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I would urge, or I would land on just do things organically, like
so how do you organically like the specific problem space? I want an agent to watch our datocracy videos. I think that's a reasonable thing to want it to be able to do.
Well, first we would have to somehow wait. Oh, so watching videos. How do you watch a video? What does it mean?
How do I watch a video?
No. I'm just thinking aloud. Like,
okay,
you have to teach this agent and in combination with our knowledge, how to understand video, and either we do that, and we have to do the training ourselves, right? So that I trust it, because I will not trust an LLM. It's not so.
Well, how complicated a piece of software would you trust? Is it the complexity of the software, or like what is it about? Like, what would you trust to digest a video? Is I guess the question.
Well, at this point, I cannot tell you.
Right. So okay. So this is good. It is an unsolved problem. You certainly don't trust LLMs as they exist today. You might trust an MLM if I could design something. And
no.
This is probably why would you not trust an MLM even if you don't know what it is?
Is MLM? What is an MLM?
Minimal language model.
Oh yeah, no, it's still a language model. So
okay, well, when you say a language model, why is it that you don't trust it? even
because
in the
I
arbitrary.
cannot. There's no certainty. You
Well,
cannot
so
have.
okay, certainty. But I
You
mean,
cannot,
look at my certainty. If I ask a human being to review a video, there's no
Mhm.
certainty there, is there?
Well, it
I
depends on
mean,
the
like,
expert. It depends
I
on
mean,
the
you
expertise.
you and I could look at the same video and have two totally different interpretations of it, right? I mean,
Yes,
because language is ambiguous and context is important, right?
and
Anything
that's a
involving
problem.
language and context, yes,
But
language.
that's a problem. We have to like context and all those things. They are at the language level. At the knowledge level, we have to like take all those things out. That way you can apply knowledge to different languages, different cultures, when you uh, put an interpreters or agents in the middle. That
Right.
way you
So,
can
but when you're
get.
right, but so right now, so here's the problem that I want to solve, and you saying like here, I think this is the challenge, right? And we may have to leave it here because I got to run off. Right? Is that um, and this would be a good thing for the next one is to actually work on the humane definition piece because there's something about language models that bothers you in that, and like so part of it is that they are probabilistic, I guess, or non-deterministic. I would argue that um, I do not believe it is possible to create a deterministic encoding of language. Because you have to know, maybe this is a fundamental philosophical point, getting back to your idea of smart documents when we started this after the Zigzag project, is that like your definitions of terms can work well for you, but like even my like what this word means in practice, like there's this gap between what I intend, what I say, what you hear, and what you interpret, right? And the more shared context we have, the more trust we have, the more shared experiences we have, the closer we can get to some understanding of each other,
Yes.
right? But it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be absolutely deterministic because I don't think I don't think it is possible to reduce the analog world to a single digital representation because there's always different layers of nuance and meaning and affect.
Yes, but that's what people said about the chess playing computers.
No,
That's what
no,
they
no,
said
no.
about Go.
No one ever said chess couldn't be encoded.
No, not
This is
encoded.
really important.
No, not
But
encoded.
no, but I'm saying language can't even be encoded. That's my point, right? Because
Okay.
the rules of chess, the moves of
Mhm,
chess have always been fully digital. And
mhm.
people said computers would never be smart enough to be human. Well, first they said, the reason, by the way, first they said within a decade of the 1950s, a computer would beat a human at chess. And then they failed spectacularly at that prediction. And then they said that, yes, I have to leave in 3 minutes, that and then people said, well, it'll never happen. And then eventually it did happen, right? So what I'm arguing is that these formal systems, computers can totally analyze and rigorously encode and whatever. I'm arguing language is not a formal system. So whatever intuitions we have of how computers handle formal systems like games, and don't forget the way the computers beat humans at chess was by using the way they beat humans at chess was by being smart. The way they beat humans at Go was by using essentially foundation models, right?
Uh, yeah, like the AlphaGo,
Like
well,
LLMs. Yeah, AlphaGo
play
is like it's not
play
exactly
itself.
what I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a foundation model using machine learning kinds of things, probabilistic stuff, not deterministic machine reasoning. Right. So I mean, you're actually, I think so the best chess players today are not mechanistic algorithm followers. They are these sort of emergent foundation models, even for chess.
Mm.
Right.
I okay.
And so I think that you have a deep aversion to large language models because of a bunch of extrinsic factors, the corporations, the complexity, the omniscience piece, things like
Yes.
that. And then I think you also have an intrinsic concern about neural networks as a way to do encoding because they have this
Yes.
probabilistic, right?
Yeah.
And so let's use that much neutral term, technical term, neural network.
Mhm.
And versus formal reasoning, I guess. And I think I'd like to explore the possibility that, and as we try to formalize your concerns and desires, is that I would argue that any sufficiently complex formal system to understand video would have all the same drawbacks as neural networks. And therefore, rather than obsessing over the formal reasoning for some other things, like how do we build systems that are incrementally debuggable and comprehensible to address the key points? So this was good for us to thrash this out with you and I, and Nat Tom. Maybe next month we can actually focus on the humane definition and see if we can, I'd like to say, schematize our anxiety. We write down the things that bother us and where there are trade-offs, where we can redefine the emotional intent behind our words to find something that we can say, oh yeah, that is the thing we both want. And then this is the open technical question of, can we build that?
Yeah, okay.
All right, leave it there. Thank you very much, Ernest.
Thank you, Ernie.
Appreciate it. We miss you, Tom. Hopefully you get to watch this